Well, hello there. This is Vichar's the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Now, I haven't made so many videos recently. I've been following the World Chess Championship. Really exciting match. Congratulations to young Gukesh. I was personally rooting for Ding, but I think it might be better that, in fact, he didn't win the match. He seemed happier for it, I think. Now, I played this game against Mrs. Chess Noob a little bit over a week ago. We're out and about at a bar. We sort of had a few drinks, had dinner, and we played this on over the board, on a real board. And I wanted to demonstrate this game because when you're playing a casual game, often you will play against people who are maybe much stronger or maybe somewhat weaker than yourself. And in my situation, Mrs. Chess Noob is much more of a beginner chess player. And the way we played this game was, maybe you did this as a child, was that Mrs. Chess Noob could make a decision midway to switch colors. That makes for a really interesting way to play because it potentially equalizes, the various strengths. Now, previously, sometimes I play, let's say with rook odds, but the thing with rook odds is, of course, rooks are barely involved in the opening stages of a game. So, in fact, rook odds aren't really that much of a disadvantage, especially if there's a big gap in performance, in strength, and the game never really leaves sort of the beginning tactics. Let's see this game. So Mrs. Chess Noob had white, I had black. We start off with 4 knights. So all 4 knights come out. 4 knights Italian, and against 4 knights Italian, the move to know, I've made quite a few videos about this already, is knight captures the e4 pawn, because after captures, you've got this fantastic d5 fork. Now, this is actually completely fine for white, but the thing that white needs to know is that the only good move in this position is the backwards bishop move to c3, and after captures, capture back this way. It's not necessarily the most obvious move, and Mrs. Chess Noob played a very logical looking move, pinning the knight to the king. This is one of the most common responses, in fact, to this position, but it is a blunder. Here we capture this way, and the problem is that the pawn now chains an attack on the knight. So I think Mrs. Chess Noob just wanted to increase the potentially to increase, maybe the pressure. I'm not too sure. This, of course, is another mistake because we chomp down the line, captures as well, push forward, and here, what do? Take yet again. And, look at this pawn capture, pawn march, threatening yet another capture. And so that is not the way to play. And you can see it's basically -5 already. Right, knight here. In this position, I knew I was completely winning. And I thought, what's the best move here? So queen here is probably logical, potentially, you've got scholar's mate type ideas. I decided to play a slightly different way. I decided to play queen to f6 with the defense here, and also potentially putting pressure on the f pawn. Captures, that's fine. Here I was thinking, do I just bring the bishop out straight away? I thought, no, let's just consolidate first. So this is, again, not the strongest move, but it consolidates. And yep, that was a clever move, very clever move. Queen to d6. All right, so now we take. Now notice the queens look at each other. That's fine. Take this way, attack on the bishop, captures, so all developed, attack on their bishop there. Mrs. Chess Noob moves their bishop out of the way. I now short castle. Stockfish reckons it would be more accurate to just kick the bishop. Now this is a mistake. Can you see why it's a mistake? Can you see it? So didn't appreciate the sort of semi-open G file, and of course this is potentially quite winning. So Mrs. Chess Noob doesn't see that. They long castle, and at this point I still didn't quite recognize it. We had a few drinks, They capture, I capture back, and unfortunately now Mrs. Chess Noob sees this tactic but plays in the wrong direction. So bishop should have come here, you know, with that pawn being pinned, effectively, you know, a good chance to win to win a pawn at least. Well, at least it's a very forcing move, but this way is a mistake, of course. The bishop is hanging. So he captures, and in this position, Mrs. Chess Noob wanted to switch it around. She was basically challenging me, you know, because she was thinking maybe I'll just resign. I said, oh, look, let's play on. And she challenged me to see whether I could play on from this position. So let's take a look. So let's switch that over. So Mrs. Chess Noob now has the black pieces. I've got the white. Let's flip the board around. And here, now we've just, so they've just captured the bishop. What should we do? So what's a potential way to play? Now clearly, white is completely losing in this position, but the strength is still in that g file. And so let's make a rook battery. So rook to dg1, attack on that pawn. So they push the pawn forward, seems to make sense. So now we've got a nice, simple tactical approach. Let's undermine that pawn. h4. So we want to undermine that pawn because, of course, it is pinned, placing pressure on the pin piece. Now, there we go. And here, they push their pawn forward so that it wouldn't get, you know, potentially taken, but that's a mistake. And you can see the best moves, potentially king to f7, off that problematic g file, or potentially bishop to f4, first with check, and now defending the g5 square, so that when you then push the g5, it's defended. So those would have been the best ways to respond. But, you know, moving forward, that seems to make sense because of the threat, particularly for beginner players. But now I've got a rook captures with check. You will notice black is still completely fine, but they have to be very, very careful. They've only got 1, 2, 3. I suppose they could block as well. That wouldn't really make a lot of sense. That block wouldn't make a lot of sense. So a king move is logical, but it's very easy to make the wrong move. So king should probably go to h8, but they moved in the wrong direction. So either of these squares would have potentially actually been all right. So this is the wrong square to move. And can you see why? That's right. Here with check, skewer, at least winning that rook. And the king now has only 2 legal moves. One of them is mate, or one of them, you know, limps on. Unfortunately, Mrs. Chess Noob played the wrong square. And here, that is mate. Good game, GG. The big takeaway from this game is that even when you're completely losing, try to make new threats. That's the way you can potentially equalize a game that you're losing anyway. And the second thing is, in casual games, it doesn't really matter. Think about playing these sort of interesting variations just to shake things up, particularly against a friend or a loved one where there may be a significant difference in strength. Let's say playing your child or maybe a young nephew or niece. Anyway, have a good day.